guys, this is Paul with rcFoamFighters. Welcome back. This is basically going to be the build video for the new plans of the FF-35V2 70mm EDF. The plans are now released on the website, and I will have them on sale for 50% off for 1 week for all you guys that follow us on rcFoamFighters. So anyway, let's get into the build. Okay guys, we're going to get started on working on the plans. First thing you need to do is print out the plans. Make sure you print out to actual size and not have it scale to fit or any other weird kind of setting to make sure your plans print out correctly. So just real quick, at the front of the plan set, you have the general details that kind of give some information about the plane. Shows the CG location of the plane from the top view. There's another page in here that has kind of more notes, general notes about the plane, some warnings, about where you can fly it, and make sure you don't put any holes in there in the plane where your hand can come in contact with the EDF and stuff like that. It also has basic information for your aileron and elevator settings. This one is basically going to be a quad elevon plane, but it has some very basic notes about a suggested setting for the throws of the control surfaces, so you can take a look at that and use that as a starting point. You can change it to the way you like to fly. Next thing you're going to do is take a look at the overall key plan. This kind of shows the layout of the whole plan set. So if you're doing the tiled set, you're going to have sheets that basically look like this. And what I usually do, like I said, is I'll cut down on the right side and the bottom off of these plans, and then you're just going to tape them all together, so you line it up on this blue edge to the other blue edge of the other page that comes in the consecutive order. So when you get it all set, it should have basically 4 pages or 4 large sheets that'll fit onto 4 sheets of foam board, and this key plan kind of shows how they fit on that foam board. So when you get the plan set, you can take a closer look. So let me get these plans all cut out, and then we'll get them ready to put on the foam board. Okay guys, after you get the plans all taped together, pretty much like puzzle pieces, what I usually do is I'll go around on the inside where the foam board outline is and kind of trim off as much as I can, so I can get ready to tape down onto the foam board. And this plan is going to take 4 sheets of foam board, and this time I'm going to try a new method. I actually painted the foam board with some Tester's model paint before I even tape the plans down, so hopefully it'll make it a little easier. So the back side is still white, top side is gray. So I'm gonna tape the plans down. Most of them are gonna be taped to the white side, because that's where you do all your cutting and bevel cuts, and then the outside will be the gray. So let's see how this works out this time. This is the first time I'm trying it this way, where I painted the foam board first, but let's see if it works and continue on with the build. Okay guys, just for a real quick reference, the paint I used is Tester's model paint. So far it's one of the best ones I found that is foam safe, and it won't melt or warp your foam board when you paint on it. So again, that's kind of what I'm using. I'm just using a flat gray primer color for the model that I'll be building today. Okay guys, I got the plans all taped down to the foam board. And again, like I said, I taped it down to the white side, and then my painted side is on the back, because all my bevel cuts and stuff like that will be on the bottom. So what you want to do after you get it taped down to the foam board is you usually want to cut down kind of the individual pieces so they're more manageable to work with and cut out. We're going to start with the main wing. Basically we're just going to do straight cuts pretty much all the way around the whole perimeter of it. Then you'll have some single 45-degree bevel cuts for the ailerons and the elevator surfaces. And again, later on these will become elevons. Okay, the main wing is all cut out. It was just straight cuts all the way around, pretty much throughout most of it. And then you have single bevel cuts throughout all the control surfaces. And I use the 45-degree bevel cutter. It just makes it easier for me. I'll put a link in the video notes if you guys are interested in finding one. But basically, after I get the single 45-degree bevel cuts done, I'll run a thin bead of hot glue in the cut here, and I'll take a spare piece of foam board and just kind of wipe it down and make a thin layer of hot glue to help create like a hot glue hinge. That'll make it stronger and help keep the foam board from peeling away as you use it over time. Okay guys, I noticed I made a mistake when I was cutting the single 45-degree bevel cut on the leading edge of the main wing. It should be on the bottom side. So just in a real quick way to fix it, I just cut a strip off about the same size as this ruler. Then I flipped them 180 degrees. So now the leading edge is on the correct bottom side. So just make sure when you guys cut it, make sure you put the 45-degree bevel cut on the main wing on the bottom side. Okay guys, now I'm going to cut out the KFM2 airfoil piece. This is pretty much similar to the main wings, just all straight cuts all the way around, and then we'll have a single 45-degree bevel cut on the top side. So just make sure we put it on the top side, not on the wrong side like I did on the last piece. Alright, I have the KFM2 airfoil all cut out. It was all straight cuts all the way around, and then we put a single 45-degree bevel cut on the leading edges on the top side. Now that we have this cut out, this is going to epoxy down. I'm going to use some 5-minute epoxy. We're going to epoxy it down to the top side of the main wing. So make sure everything lines up good. And then you're just going to put the 5-minute epoxy in, and then put some weight on top of it while it dries to make it nice and flat, and hopefully gets it to secure nice and sealed. So your leading edge is nice and sealed all the way around, so air won't get into it when you're flying and separated. Alright, we have the main wing and the KFM2 airfoil all glued together or epoxied together, so it's nice and secure. So it's ready to go. We're just going to put this to the side now, and we're going to start working on the next piece. The next piece we're going to be working on is the belly pan of the main fuselage. This is the part that's going to go on the bottom. It basically folds up with the two sides, and the back kind of folds up to contour and hug up next to the thrust tube cover. Also, we have the optional cheater hole slot. This is if you do have the 3D printer. I'll put the part model on the website to download for free, where you can print the cheater hole. If you don't have a 3D printer, what you can do if you do want to make a cheater hole is just kind of cut out a similar shape as this. Maybe leave a piece in the middle to make like 2 smaller holes, or any sort of vents that you kind of want on the bottom. Then if you want, you can just put some sort of screen material over it. Okay, we have the bottom belly plate of the fuselage pretty much all cut out. As you can see, I've got double 45-degree bevel cuts on this main fold line, so this thing will fold up nicely. Most of these other fold lines, it barely folds, so you only need a single 45-degree bevel cut through here, just enough to make it fold. Same with here. These little sections, you just cut out a little tiny bit through there. Again, I cut out the cheater hole for the 3D printed cheater hole plate that's going to go in there. If you don't have a 3D printer, what I'd recommend is basically cutting out kind of slots that are going to end up looking roughly about like that, that'll allow air into the EDF to give it a little more air to assist the air ducts. But basically I'm going to be using a 3D printed cheater hole, so I'll show you that in a little bit once we start gluing this together. Again, there was single 45-degree bevel cuts all the way along and around the edges. We can have a shallow bevel cut right here at the tip of where this is going to fold up and meet the thrust tube cover. And also at the very back, there's a shallow bevel cut here, so it'll meet more flushly with the bottom of the main wing. Here's the next pieces we're going to start cutting out. These are the EDF mounting bulkheads. You got bulkhead E1 and bulkhead E2. Then we have these small thrust tube supports that are going to hot glue onto this EDF mounting bulkhead E1. So let me cut these out. Basically, what I usually like to do for the circle parts, I usually like to use a compass to at least start the rough cut. Get it sized right to that hole. Make sure you check this hole size to the actual EDF that you're using. Some of these 70mm EDFs have a different outer diameter. So once you get that adjusted, then you can start cutting it out. So let me cut these out, and then we'll show you what it looks like when we start stacking it and hot gluing it together. I now have all the EDF mounting bulkheads all cut out, so we're ready to hot glue it together. Basically, you're going to hot glue EDF bulkhead E1 on top of bulkhead E2 like that, and then you'll take these small pieces T1 and T2, and then they'll hot glue onto the front face like that. Alright, the EDF mounting bulkheads are all glued together. As you can see, these notches are on this side. These are going to be pointing towards the back of the plane because the thrust tube cover basically is going to butt up against here, and these are kind of like supports for that. So this is going to fit into this slot here. So we're going to hot glue that in a little bit. I'm just going to test fit, you know, see my EDF basically fits right in there, so it's going to go in there like that. So, and we'll hot glue it. And basically I'm going to create a hole right here. I'm going to make it for a pass-through for the wires for the EDF to go through. All right, I now cut a hole through the EDF mounting piece. Not quite a square, I did it at an angle. But anyway, that's going to be for these wires to go through, either from the EDF or the ESC will pass through here so they can connect. So now that we've got that cut, again, we're going to hot glue this into that slot here with these tabs towards the back of the plane. All right, the EDF mounting bulkheads are now secured to the belly pan. So now we're just going to run some hot glue on the sides here so we can fold up the two sides of the belly pan to meet up with this EDF mounting piece. So that'll help hold it in shape. So after you put the hot glue in, and just hold it until the hot glue dries and secures a little bit, and that'll hold it at the right angle. All right, we now have the sides all secured with the hot glue. So the next step you want to do is you're going to want to put some hot glue through here and here, glue the front end together like that, and then you're going to want to do the same thing on the back. Put some hot glue through here and here, and glue all the sides up so they meet up nicely and stay secure. All right, we now have all these edges hot glued together so they're nice and secure. So next thing I'm going to do, since I have the cheater hole printed out, 3D printed, I'm just going to hot glue this into place, basically like that, and then that'll be set. All right, the next piece we're going to start working on is the bottom fuselage thrust tube cover. This is a pretty simple piece. It's pretty much just a rectangle, and then we're going to have a bunch of double 45-degree bevel cuts throughout the piece that'll allow it to fold up to make a nice thrust tube cover. All right, the thrust cover tube piece is pretty much all cut out. Got double 45-degree bevel cuts in all the fold lines. Basically, this is going to fold up like that around these two thrust tube support pieces. So I'm going to cut these out. These are basically, you know, we're going to use the compass to create the circle on the inside, you know, just like we did for the EDF mounting piece, and then basically just straight cuts around. All right, guys, we got the two thrust tube supports all cut out. So basically these just hot glue together to make it a little bit more rigid. Okay, guys, I got the two thrust tube supports. They were glued together, and now I glued them into the thrust tube cover, so that helps hold it into shape. So after we have that done, I'm going to glue this piece into the bottom of the fuselage. As you can see, it lines up and is supported by the thrust tube supports on the EDF mounting piece. So basically you're just going to hot glue this to the front part right there. Don't glue it on the sides yet. We'll wait until we get the wing glued on, and then you can glue it from the underside to make sure it's nice and secure. Okay, guys, I got the thrust tube cover and the thrust tube supports glued into the plane. I just put the main wing on right now for a test fit. It's not hot glued on. One thing I forgot to mention though, when you do glue in these thrust tube rings, make sure you put them inside, offset from the edge, roughly about 1/8 of an inch. You know, you want a little bit of overlap, because when the thrust cone goes in there, it'll make it look a lot nicer when it's covered up a little bit. All right, guys, we now have the thrust tube cover and the mounts all ready to go. So before we start putting the main wing on and stuff like that, it's going to be easier to mount the EDF before we get the main wing on. So to prepare to mount the EDF, I cut a little hole here in the thrust tube cover so the wires can pass through here, and also there's one through the EDF mounting piece, and then that'll meet up with the ESC wires that are going to come through this side. So basically I'm just going to hot glue or sticky tape the ESC here, and then the EDF is going to mount in here. Okay, guys, I now have the EDF mounted and the ESC is hot glued into the plane. So now we're ready to hot glue on the main wing. It's just going to fit on top, basically like that. Let's do a test fit, and it just hot glues on the plane like that. Okay, we now have the main wing glued down to the bottom portion of the belly pan, and the thrust tube cover is hot glued on the sides to the main wing, so it's all nice and secure. So next up, we're going to create the thrust tube to put inside the thrust tube holder here. So basically, I use cardstock. You can use any color you want, but I have black. This is an 8.5 by 11 sheet. So I ended up cutting it down to only 7 inches wide. Left it, you know, the 11 length. So basically, you just curl up the cardstock, and you're going to fit it in here around the EDF. Basically like that, and then we're going to tape it onto the EDF, and you want to push it out so it fits firmly against the thrust tube holder in the back to create the cone. Okay, we now have the thrust tube pretty much all installed on the plane. I put a little bead of hot glue here and here to hold it in on the back side, and then it's taped down on the front, and I pulled it super tight with the tape, you know, to get it to be nice and snug around the EDF. Okay guys, next up I'm going to be working on these main and nose fuselage bulkheads. There's basically 3 of them, and they're going to be cut out. They're just simple straight cuts. And after getting them cut out, you're just going to hot glue them one on top of each other so it's 3 layers thick. Then after you get that glued together, it's going to basically glue on to the front of the belly pan here with 2 layers on the belly pan and 1 layer hanging over the edge so the nose can glue onto it. Okay guys, I got the bulkheads for the main fuselage and nose all glued together. There's 3 layers. As I mentioned, I got 2 layers onto the main belly pan here, and then one's overhanging the edge, and this is going to assist gluing on the nose piece, the bottom fuselage nose piece, after we get it all cut out. And that's the next piece I'm going to be working on. So I'm going to cut this out. Basically, it's got single 45-degree angles kind of all the way around the perimeter, and then it's got some double 45-degree angle cuts inside the fold lines. So let me get it cut out, and then after that we'll cut out these bulkheads, and those will help shape the nose. Alright, we got the bottom nose piece all cut out. Like I mentioned, there's a bunch of double 45-degree bevel cuts kind of all throughout the interior of it, and then it's a single 45-degree bevel cut all the way around the perimeter for the most part. Once you get that all cut out, you know, you kind of put some creases in it and folds so it'll be nice on the outside of the fuselage. After you get that all ready, basically we're going to take bulkhead N2 and N1. N2 will go basically right here at this fold line. Just going to glue in here, and then N1 basically will glue in here at the front. Okay guys, the bottom nose piece is all glued into shape. I got the bulkheads glued into the front of the nose. So this thing is now ready to glue on to the rest of the plane. So this is just going to slide in here, basically like this. And then these 2 little notches here, so this can slide into that. Let's see if I can get. So basically like that. So we'll hot glue it in place just like this. Alright guys, we got the bottom nose piece glued onto the rest of the plane, so that's all secure and ready to go. So now we're going to move on to the next piece and be cutting out the exhaust cone for the back of the EDF. So, and this one I actually painted a different color. I'm not sure how good that shows up on camera. This is kind of like a metallic graphite, it said. So not quite the color I was hoping for, but hopefully it'll be a little bit different from the rest of the gray, to at least give it a little bit of an accent. Okay guys, I got the thrust exhaust cone all cut out. Put all those single bevel cuts on each fold line, so it'll fold up pretty much in a round circle. What you want to do is cut out this jet exhaust cone shaper jig. Basically it'll look like this after you cut it out. It's just kind of a multi-sided circle here, and you put a single 45-degree bevel cut all the way around it. So you use that when you're hot gluing it to help shape it. So I'm going to use that, you know, kind of hold it in a very round shape, and then I'll hot glue the end to this end and glue it together. You probably want to put a little bit of hot glue in each of these little fold lines. That'll help keep and hold it in shape. All right, we've got the exhaust cone all pretty much hot glued together. So after you get it done, you can hot glue it to the back of the plane. Basically it fits on just like that. Alright, the exhaust cone is all secured to the back of the plane, so now it's time to move on to the two top pieces of the upper fuselage. We'll start off with the top fuselage nose piece. This is very similar to the bottom piece. It has a bunch of double 45-degree bevel cuts kind of throughout the middle, and then single 45-degree bevel cuts around the edges. Alright, the upper fuselage nose piece is all cut out. As you can see, I got the double 45-degree bevel lines all through the interior of this piece, and then it's got a single 45-degree bevel cuts kind of all the way around the perimeter, other than the back side. Once you get it all cut out, you're just going to hot glue it within these areas here and glue it together so it takes form and shape like the upper fuselage. So let me get it hot glued together and then I'll show you what it looks like. Okay guys, I got the upper fuselage nose piece pretty much all glued together and shaped. Basically we can do a test fit. This is just going to fit on top of the nose like that, and later on we'll hot glue it on, but we're not going to do it right now. We're going to leave this accessible so we can put the battery in later and get the proper balance of the plane. And then once we have that set, then we'll later on glue on the upper nose. Alright, next piece up we're going to be working on is the top fuselage piece. This is the main cover of the fuselage that kind of covers up everything. So basically it has double 45-degree bevel cuts, 3 of them down the middle, and then this cut down here on the edge, all you need to do is cut through one side of the foam or the paper, because that's going to fold the opposite way, so that's an easy fold. Then the outer edges, you're going to have shallow bevel cuts. You're going to cut, along that bevel line, cut as much foam off, and then sand it to get it smooth. We have a couple slots here for the vertical stabilizers that we'll cut out, and we're also going to be cutting in the battery hatch. We won't cut it all the way out. We'll kind of cut the edges of it, to mark it, but we want it to be able to fold in the same position as the rest of the fuselage. So we'll later on put in the bulkheads and stuff like that before we fully cut out the hatch. So let me cut out this top fuselage piece and I'll show you what it looks like. Okay guys, I got the upper fuselage piece pretty much all cut out. Basically it's got 3 double 45-degree bevel cuts all the way down through the center, so it can fold up nicely this way. Then on these 2 outer cuts, it's just a single cut right through the top layer of the paper, or which would basically be the bottom side of this, but because it's going to be folding the opposite way, you don't need to put bevel cuts in it. We also have shallow bevel cuts all the way around the outer perimeter for the most part. Basically I cut it down as close as I could with the knife after I peeled back the paper to give it a nice cut line, and then you just use a sanding block to make it all nice and super even as possible. We will be putting the hatch in. I did cut just through the single layer of foam board just to mark it, because we want to be able to put these bulkheads in later to hold it in form and be the same exact shape as the fuselage. As you can see, I did cut all the way through for the hatch just on the 4 corners to make it a little easier after we get it formed to cut through. Okay, we have the top fuselage piece pretty much all done. I put the hatch in. I created a tape hinge, and there's a magnet here at the back of the hatch, and also on this side of the hatch. Let me see, right there. So it just locks in like that when it's closed. Basically, here's the way the formers went in. I put a bulkhead attached to the upper fuselage, and then 2 attached to the hatch, and then another one to the back of the upper fuselage. So it makes it nice and secure and helps hold it in shape, and hopefully keeps them, roughly in the same shape, the hatch and the fuselage. So that's pretty much done. We're not going to hot glue this on yet. Now it's time to, last parts we got to cut out are the 2 vertical stabilizers, and we got to create the canopy. And I want to put the rest of the electronics in before we glue the top down and kind of find the balance point so we know where to put the battery inside the plane. Alright, the next pieces up are the 2 vertical stabilizers. Basically, I like to get some of the premium foam board to make the vertical stabilizer. It's a bit stronger foam board. It's less flexible and definitely more rigid, so hopefully they'll last longer and won't bend so easy on you. This is I picked this foam board up at Michael's. I forget how much it was, but it came with like 4 or 5 sheets of 11 by 14 size foam board, and it's definitely a lot more rigid and strong. So this makes good vertical stabilizers. You can use the regular Dollar Tree foam board if you want, but again, like I just mentioned, you know, they're not going to be as strong. So basically, these are very simple to make. It's all straight cuts, so just follow the lines around it and cut them out. All right, I got the 2 vertical stabilizers all cut out. They're just put on here as a quick test fit. They're not hot glued yet, so I'm just going to take them back off, and we're going to take the top of the fuselage off, and we're going to get ready to put in the rest of the electronics before we glue the top on. Next up, we're going to put the 2 servos in. Basically, these are 2 Emax 12-gram Metal Gear servos. We're going to be running quad elevon setup on this plane, and basically, kind of to determine where they're going to go, you know, check your control rods and see how long they are. Mine are roughly about that long, so the servo is going to go fairly far back on my plane. If you have longer control rods, you can move it a little farther forward. But basically, that's where these are going to go. I'm just going to cut small holes in the side here, the same size as the servo, and I'm going to push the servos inside underneath the belly pan and run the wires on the inside. I now have the servos mounted on both sides. These are going to be for quad elevons. You can have the aileron and elevator surfaces controlled by 1 servo on each side. And just to show you, I put access holes for the wires on top. So I just cut right above where the servos are, ran the wires up through the top and to the receiver, which I now have mounted. So that's pretty much all the electronics are mounted in the plane now. So let's move on. I'm going to put the control rods and control horns on the quad elevons. Alright guys, we now have the quad elevons all set up. I got control horns and control rods connected to each of the ailerons and elevator surfaces. So basically we got an aileron and elevator connected to 1 servo on each side. We only need 2 servos for this plane. So you can see they're working in quad elevon fashion, up and down, left and right. So that's basically it to get the all the electronics set up. So let's move on to the next step. Alright, next up we're going to start getting the canopy set up for the plane. Basically there's a canopy support that has 2 pieces that we need to cut out of foam board, and then you can print the canopy on cardstock. This is just like your thicker paper. This one was a little bit off-white. It was kind of a beige color, but you can also print on white or probably whatever color you want to darken and lighten this up a little bit. But basically we'll cut this out and then you fold it up to make the canopy. Then this is the support piece made out of foam board that's going to go below it, and that's what glues to the front of the nose, the top of the nose, and helps support the canopy. Okay, the canopy support piece is all put together after I cut it out. Basically you just have the cross member that hot glues into the main piece, and this is just going to hot glue onto the top of the fuselage nose piece. Basically right where this cross beam is right where it kind of has the bend there in the middle. So you kind of line that up and then just get it as centered as you can and hot glue it on. Next up, we're going to take the cardstock canopy. We're just going to cut it out along the edges, and if you can notice here, there's a little bit of tabs. These are going to be overlaid as you fold it, and they're going to glue together. Alright, I got the canopy all cut out for the most part, and then I folded it to put some creases. Basically at this end where these 2 points meet, you just fold it from there down to this corner on the front side, and that'll kind of give it the basic shape. And then there's little tabs, and when you print it you can see there's little gray lines. I'm not sure how good it's showing up on camera, but those are little tabs that will overlap. And then I'm just going to use some stick glue to initially hold it. Then after I get it glued down, I'll also put some tape on the inside to hold it in shape. So basically it just kind of folds up kind of like that, and then that'll be your canopy. Okay guys, got the canopy all glued together and taped on the inside, so it's all taking shape. And basically that's just going to fit on this canopy support piece that's on top of the nose. So you're just going to hot glue this on top like this, and just kind of pay a little bit of extra careful attention, and put some hot glue right around the edges so it'll seal down to the sides of the plane. So basically just put it on like that, and then that'll be pretty much good to go. Alright guys, we got pretty much everything almost done. Basically last thing we need to do is check the center of gravity so we can put some supports around the battery in the right position. So usually what I'll do is, I'll put everything on here. The canopy and the other part, the top piece, are not glued on yet until we get that battery position where we want. So I got everything in the plane, and you can go by the document that's included in the plan set. It shows the center of gravity should be 19 inches back from the tip of the nose, or you can also measure it by 4 3/4 down the leading edge of the wing from the wing root out. So I put some marks on the plane at 4 3/4 inches, so I can try and get the plane to balance there, and then move the battery back and forth until it's in the right position. Once I get it in the right position, I'll mark it, and then I'll put a little bit of extra scrap foam board around it to make it always go in that right position and hold it in place. So moved it back a little bit. Let's see. Still a little nose heavy, so I got a little bit of adjustments. So let me get it dialed in, and then I'll show you what I'm talking about putting stuff around the battery to hold it in place. Alright, I now have some battery braces glued into the plane. This is just made from scrap foam board, and this will change, depending on what battery size you use, or what equipment you use, or where your ESCs and stuff like that. So this will move forward and back, depending on what you're using. But anyway, that's what you should build, something to go around the battery, depending on what you're using, once you find your proper CG. So basically the battery just will slide in here, and I got a little Velcro at the front, and just goes in there like that. So it should be set up for the proper CG. The only thing left to add is the decals and probably just a little bit of weight from the hot glue, but it should be pretty much right on target. We'll double check it after we get everything put together. Alright, I now have the top of the fuselage glued onto the plane, and also the nose with the canopy. So last things we got to do is put on the vertical stabilizers. Before I put the vertical stabilizers on though, I'm going to put the decals on them. It'll make it a little easier. So there's decals included in the plan set. As you can see here, vertical stabilizer decals, Navy decals, and some other random decals. Again, this plane is roughly based on the F-35C version, the Navy version, so that's why I put the Navy decals on there. These decals, I usually print them out to an Avery sticker. This is the 8.5 by 11 type sticker, so you can just peel them off and stick them on the plane. Alright guys, this is pretty much the finished version of the FF-35V2 70mm EDF jet. As you can see, I've got the vertical stabilizers now hot glued to the plane, and I added all the decals for the most part. So that's pretty much it for the build. So thanks for watching rcFoamFighters. Stay tuned. I'll be trying to get this one out to Made and Fly. And again, these plans will be available on our website, so please take a look.